A new podcast conference, the latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. There's a new conference dedicated to podcasts from publishers, the Publisher Voices Summit in London in early October. One of the co-founders has explained why they set up the summit and what publishers can expect. We link to that today from our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. Vox Media is to lay off 39 employees and slow its hiring, blaming deteriorating economic conditions. iOS 16 has published its second public beta. As we get closer, a reminder that iOS 16 brings with it the ability to set a correct user agent for your iOS podcast app, removing AppleCoreMedia. We see a number of podcast apps, including Pocket Casts, PlayerPod, Castro and Podbean's app, gaining from this new API. Paranormal and True Crime podcast And That's Why We Drink are running their second annual Cryptid Poetry Slam virtual live show on Saturday, August the 13th. All proceeds this year will be donated to the National Abortion Federation. Podcast hosting company Captivate has announced that they will be the platinum sponsors of the African Podcast and Voice Artist Awards. The competition saw more than 2,000 nominees this year. Remote recording tool Riverside has launched a number of updates. Using your iOS device as a second camera, mobile support for video recording up to 4K, and the Clubhouse-like live call-in comes to Android. Livewire has published its top 10 podcast hosts by new episodes. Megaphone has climbed above Ivoox to reach number 8. Livewire also reports that Amazon CloudFront powers just over 50% of all podcast hosting. So, if AWS ever fell over, half of all podcasts would too, and we would obviously report on it when that happens, but since we use AWS too, well, you know. Sounds Profitable has announced it's to use Spooler to produce its future podcasts. Good news, Spotify's Chartable has a new Spotify integration, which is more reliable. Bad news, you've only got till Friday before the old integration goes away. Trinity Audio is profiled by Israeli website Geek Time. It wants to turn articles into podcasts using artificial voices. Google has delayed blocking third-party cookies again. Podcasting itself doesn't use cookies, so is unaffected, but websites or attribution services might do. And in the 90 days to the end of July, according to the Podnews ranker, 43% of all mentions in our newsletter were of women. In People News, Darby Dorras has been hired as Director of Content for UK production company Listen. He was previously at Something Else as an executive producer. And Amanda Bateman has joined Listen as executive producer. She was with Mags Creative. It's a Monday, so time for some tech stuff. Audio geeks might enjoy a sound design tutorial to help you recreate some of those classic 80s synth sounds from Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill. We saw it in Web Audio Weekly and we thought you'd like it. JustCast has added full integration for value with the Albi wallet. The company joins RSS.com, which did something similar last week. Podcast Admin is new and is an open source podcast platform that runs on Google Cloud and Firebase and coded using React. Features include configurable pre-roll and post-rolls, statistics, and support of multiple users.
Boostagram Corner. You can't get more top 40 than that.
Yes, boosts this week include 2,222 sats, all the ducks from Blueberry's Mike Dell. He says, I think I have the hang of this. You do. Thank you, Mike. 1,024 sats from Dave Jones, besmirching Spotify once more. He says, when the podcast index first started, people were roundly skeptical of there being 4.5 million podcasts. Now everyone wants to claim that number. 3 sats from Jaff 2100. Keep up, they say, intriguingly. 1,000 sats from Fail Better Media's Georg. 10 from Cristobal Mena. 10 from Zavi Herrera. And a thumb up emoji and 10 sats from Alf Camacho. If you get value from Podnews' podcast, please consider boosting it in your favourite new podcast app. Try Fountain to get started. They'll give you some free sats to get going. And in podcast news, Missing Pages is the first original podcast from the Podglomerate. It reopens cold cases from the book world. Hosted by world-renowned literary critic and publishing insider Bethann Patrick, it'll uncover the power struggles, mistaken identities and unfathomably bad behaviour within the secretive world of book publishing. Chameleon, Scam Likely is brand new from Campside Media. Ordinary citizens all around the US are losing their life savings to scam callers. So the hunt is on for the shadowy multinational mob behind the con. Hosted by Udijit Bhattacharjee, it launches today. And if you like learning about new podcasts in Podnews, you can get this section as a podcast itself. New podcast trailers. It's available in your favourite RSS podcast app. Just go to podnews.net/new podcast trailers to find out how to get it. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.